start the recording here. So today I wanted to, discuss whatever questions you may have, of course, on the case or the material. Quiz 2 is at the end of this week. It'll cover lectures 3 and 4. One thing I want to clarify on the case. So before I take your questions, let me actually clarify something myself. So I've asked you to build what's known as the QFD matrix. However, I'm not asking you to build the QFD matrix as it is known in the industry. It's a modified form of the QFD matrix that I'm asking you to build in this particular case assignment. So, sometimes I found that students looked up QFD matrix on the internet, and they found, you can easily find examples of the QFD matrix and the discussion about QFD matrices when you do a search on the internet. However, the QFD matrix that you will find is a rather complicated diagram that looks like this. This diagram is at a much more detailed level. It focuses more on the product at the product level rather than the business level. So this is not what I'm looking for. If you gave me this, as I've seen some students have done in previous classes, then you'll obviously have a lot of points taken off, because this is not what I'm looking for. As I mentioned, this is a much more detailed matrix, and it's at the product level. I'm looking for more at the overall business level. In other words, the business has certain goals, and these goals could be things like, I've given you an example. This is a small snapshot of the full QFD matrix for this case. It's just a small snapshot, but it's really a 2x2 matrix that I'm looking for from you folks. We have here in these columns, we have the various business goals. I've shown you 3 of them. We have the technologies in the the technologies are listed in the first column, row-wise. So here you list all the technologies, and then you're going to map. You're going to see, which technology supports which business goal, and a technology can support multiple business goals. A business goal itself can be supported by multiple technologies. So you'll be marking X's in various cells of this matrix. I've also said that it's a sparse matrix, meaning there are numbers of cells that are marked with the cross, but there are also a lot of cells that should be empty, because you're really trying to find the main connections. One can argue that indirectly, well, everything helps customer satisfaction, and that might be a correct statement. But like I mentioned the last time, managers, they're known for the skill of quickly summarizing the essence of something. That's what the QFD matrix is trying to do. So you're not trying to find, circuitous connections, distant relationships, and that kind of thing. You're trying to find the direct connection. So that's why this matrix is a sparse matrix. And I'm not asking for a traditional QFD matrix that you can find on the internet. This serves in approximately the same kind of goal, that we want the abilities of the technology to serve the requirements of the customer. But this is at a product level. This is at a product level. It's not at the level of the overall business goals, if you will. So this matrix that I'm asking you to build is a much more is in a sense, more relevant for a manager who wants to summarize, wants to get a quick grasp of the whole situation here. Okay. Now, Prabal, you had some questions on the case assignment, so let me take your questions as well.
Oh, yeah, you kind of touched on it with the QFD matrix. Most of the information out there is product focus. And so I'm still wondering if, with the UPS case, we could look at, for instance, um, real-time tracking as a business goal, or would that be more product specific?
Yeah, viewer tracking is these things are technologies
Okay.
or capabilities of technologies. Can you track viewers? Can you track, whatever? That's you just stated technology or capability of some other technology that you're listing here in your first column. You're listing all the technologies. So that could be a part of some technology, some piece of technology that UPS has. So that kind of thing comes here in this list.
Okay.
Here, what you have in these columns are, you won't put viewer tracking in these columns. In the first row, which has the columns pertaining to the different business goals, that is not where you would put viewer tracking.
Well, I mean, I meant real-time tracking of packages,
Yeah,
not.
real time tracking. Yes.
Okay, so even that wouldn't count as a business goal. Okay.
Mhm.
Um,
That could certainly count as a technology. Um, it might be part of some other of a larger technology that it has. So you can put whatever package. Um, you can put the name of the package.
right.
For example, I've not completed this. That's why I want you to go out and want the students to go out and do their research to complete um, the comprehensive list of technologies that UPS has, and real time tracking uh, is certainly something that you put in there. Um, so package tracking, real time tracking, if it's a discrete technology by itself and is not part of a larger technology, then put real time tracking right there. Or if you see that it's part of some package, then you can put the name of the package here. And then, as I said, you also have to explain what that technology is doing. So in that first question, I'm essentially looking for a bulleted list where you list out the various technologies, and with each bullet, you also provide a paragraph. So I'm just not looking for the buzzwords, but I'm also looking for a paragraph with each bullet where you can explain what that is doing. If it's doing real-time tracking, then certainly, uh, you know, uh, put a paragraph in there that explains that.
Okay.
So, and then when you go to the second question, well, you'll have already listed out your technologies. So now what is left for you to do is develop the matrix. In other words, develop the mapping of the technologies to the business goals, and again have some verbiage. And so you should have some verbiage that supports this matrix. In other words, it supports why you think a diet is helping in customer satisfaction. How do you see that? How justify those crosses that you placed in your matrix.
So if you looked up business goals for UPS, we could find something online for goals.
You will not find it that directly. You may find some information if you did a lookup of just business goals of UPS. Yes, you can find some information, but as you look at the UPS website, as you peruse the information on the UPS website, there's a lot that is there. You can look up SEC filings by UPS.
Okay.
SEC filings actually have a wealth of information on what the goals of this company are. So you can certainly look up SEC filings, and look at information that they have on their website, look at SEC filings, look at, again, general, people from UPS are going to conferences, pontificating on their business. And so there is nuggets of information you can find there as well.
Okay, yeah, that'll definitely be helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. So do your search, and you'll certainly, I've only given you 3 examples there. You will certainly find a lot more in terms of what UPS's business goals are. You can also put, notice I didn't actually begin with revenue and profit. You can certainly put those there. But as I was mentioning, that often it's very difficult to bring out a direct connection between some technology and the impact on revenue and profit. Certainly, you can have revenue and profit there. Those are corporate performance goals. And like I said, the only
cost
yeah,
savings,
go ahead.
for instance? Sorry.
Cost savings is an operational efficiency.
Oh, okay.
Cost savings is an operational efficiency. So revenue and profit can be placed, but then again, make sure that you are able to see a fairly direct connection between the technology and revenue and profit. Typically, lots of studies have been done in IS, and what we are seeing is that the technology, for example, that helps customer satisfaction is not in any. It's hard to draw a direct connection between that and revenue and profit. One can try, and one can put up some numbers there as to, hey, we'll retain these customers if we have customer satisfaction type of packages. We will gain new customers. But like I said, I've been in the industry for a long time, and whenever somebody does that, there's always a lot of opposition to that, because it's whenever somebody puts numbers like that up there, those numbers are really sort of built from just thin air. So so unless one can actually demonstrate to top management that, hey, if we don't put a CRM system in here, this customer is going to leave us. And usually that's never the case. So that's why it's difficult to put justifiable numbers. Typically, customer satisfaction's impact is in the long run. And indirectly, it helps customer loyalty and helps build the brand. So its impact is typically in the long runs. But if you're trying to justify buying a CRM package today, and you put some numbers out there today as part of your pitch to justify this, that's going to go down a rat hole. I've been in plenty of meetings in corporate to see what has happened when people try to do that. And that's simply going to go down a rat hole. But the thing is that something can be, without putting numbers in there, in other words, without trying to draw a direct link to revenue and profit, one can actually justify it on the basis of a business goal that leads to competitive advantage. That's why I had you folks, look at all these theories of competitive advantage and whatnot.
So could the values of an organization reflect business goals in a sense? The stated values?
Yeah, but yeah, it could indeed. But put them as yes, indeed, you're right. So therefore, and you will get that from your perusal of the documents that UPS has on its website. You would see, and you will see, their business goals. It'll be strewn across perhaps a number of different web pages, a number of different documents. But yeah, you can certainly see their values, and typically you have to bring the value down into a statement of a business goal.
Correct.
So So you have to, otherwise this matrix becomes too diffuse and too amorphous. If the value is, it's like a slogan, so for example, let me give you an example. For GE, there's something that they claim as doing and as a defining characteristic of GE is their slogan: "We bring good things to life." That is GE's slogan. Now, nothing wrong with that. That's a perfectly fine slogan, but it's not sufficiently concrete to bring it. So from bringing good things to life, you have to probably you have to bring that slogan down to a more tangible level. Perhaps it maps to 2 or 3 business goals of how achieving these business goals supports that overall overarching mission of General Electric, which is we bring good things to life.
Sure.
So that's why I would caution you there. That's a value. That's a value for General Electric, and it is respected. But it is not. It has to be given more concrete form when you bring this into the matrix. So don't put here "we bring good things to life" as one of the business goals that you're stating in that first row.
Definitely not. Sure.
Yeah. But you can certainly, you can look at that and then look for, okay,
Like
why is,
something like sustainability, that's the.
yes, absolutely, absolutely. That is a goal. That is a business goal. So you're indeed on the right track there. And those are the kinds of things that I want you to find out yourself.
Okay.
That's why I did not read this.
Okay. Thank
But
you.
yes, absolutely.
Clarification. Yep.
Absolutely. Sustainability is a business goal, particularly of companies these days. And it's not, we talk companies, there was talk about sustainability back in the days when I had joined industry, but at that point it was all lip service. At that point, nobody was seriously putting much into building sustainability and really thinking deeply about environmental damage and that kind of thing. But that's not the case now. Today, firms indeed have sustainability as a key business goal. And we're required to, the firms are required to, because of the, about all the Kyoto protocols signed in Japan. So that puts mandates on what countries can do in terms of greenhouse gas emissions and that kind of thing. So when the nation has to meet a certain mandate, certain sustainability metrics, then those metrics sort of trickle down to the individual companies, and individual companies have to meet them. So sustainability is actually something that is mandated now. That's why it's not funny money anymore. It was in my time, but now it's not.
Okay.
Any other questions on the case?
Not on the case.
Okay. All right. Let's look at the last, not the last lecture, but lecture number 4, and let's do it this way. So I'd asked you folks to think about, well, how does it if you think about the scenario, so rather than discuss this in the abstract, what I asked folks to think about is, if you think about the scenario of people who text and drive, so then what kind of ethical principles would be involved in this? Let me bring out the And by the way, I was watching the discussion on this topic on the discussion board, and there were very many great comments on this topic. So, but let's kind of go through it. So we talked about these 6 major ethical principles, and we said that when you come across some kind of a scenario, some kind of a decision, some kind of an action that you're trying to take, before you perform that action, kind of apply these principles, these 6 principles. So if a person who is texting and driving, if that person applies the golden rule is, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So if you're texting and driving, so you're texting and driving, what if the driver next to you on the road also starts to text and drive? So when you're texting and driving, it is certainly been proven through the accident statistics that you are creating a higher risk. So you could indeed bang into the car that is adjacent to you. So that those are unfair driving practices. So you are inflicting your own unfair driving practices upon others. What if the driver next to you started to inflict their unsafe driving practices upon you by texting and driving themselves? So obviously you would not like that, which means that, well, if you don't like that, then apply the golden rule on yourself, and then don't do that yourself either. Don't engage in that behavior yourself. So that's applying the golden rule, which should dissuade you from texting and driving. Another example of the golden rule in an IT context, I think that I mentioned during the lecture is, well, if you think about outsourcing jobs, and outsourcing is very much an IT-enabled thing. It's an IT-enabled phenomenon. Outsourcing did not happen in the 1960s, even though labor was cheap in those offshore locations. The reason why it didn't happen in the 1960s is because, we didn't have the tools and technologies to do it at that time. The internet wasn't there. So it's possible now, of course, and has been possible for the last 20 years, as we have seen a lot of outsourcing. But the manager should stop and think that, hey, these people that I'm letting go from the company, I'm sending their jobs abroad. Well, what if somebody were to outsource my job? It is true that managerial roles can also be outsourced. So that was a kind of an application of the golden rule, which would deter the manager from doing the outsourcing. So here is a different context of the golden rule, which basically says that should do unto others as you would have them do unto you, which means if you don't want the driver next to you to be a source of danger for yourself, then you should also accord the same courtesy to other drivers, to the driver next to you, by not texting and driving yourself. If we look at Kant's categorical imperative, and we have tried to apply this to this situation, well, this essentially means, hey, what if? So this is going even beyond just the driver next door. This is saying that, hey, what if everybody on this highway that I'm on, what if everybody started to text and drive? That would lead to chaos. If everybody starts to text and drive on this highway, you will have 20 car pileups, if you will. So obviously, if you think from that perspective, all right, let me think. What if everybody on this road starts to text and drive? That's the application of the Kant's categorical imperative. And then you can only come to the conclusion that, hey, I should not text and drive myself, because think about what would happen if everybody on this road starts to text and drive. So that too would dissuade you from texting and driving. So that's looking at it from the Kant's categorical imperative. If you think about the Descartes rule of change, it's the Descartes rule of change is often confused with the Kant's categorical imperative. The difference is in Kant's categorical imperative, what you're asking is what happens if the action that you as an individual is trying to take is that same action is taken by a whole bunch of other people. So Kant's categorical imperative is focused on other people. Descartes' rule of change is actually focused on you yourself who's taking the action. And it's asking the question, well, can you take this action again and again and again and get away with it? Now, as the accident statistics have shown, when a person texts and drives, well, they get away with it the first time. They get away with it the second time. And then they start texting and driving. They start texting for longer amounts of time. So, initially they may have just done a single text and then got back to driving the car, if you will. But what has been seen is that people start to, once they see they're getting away with it, they start to text for longer amounts of time. And then invariably they get into an accident. So as this emboldens you to text for longer time, then ultimately your luck will run out. Your luck is going to run out. So that's what the Descartes rule of change is trying to say. So ultimately your luck is going to run out if you keep doing this. So don't start doing this in the first place. Don't begin with it. Don't start this behavior, because you will get sort of induced into performing this behavior for longer amounts of time, and then ultimately you're going to get into, you're going to come to grief. So the Descartes rule of change is focused on yourself, but it's focused on your behavior being done repeatedly. And this too results in a negative outcome, ultimately. So all these three principles apply, and they're all saying to you, don't text and drive. Let's look at the others. The utilitarian principle. The utilitarian principle says that take the action that benefits the largest number of people. The action that benefits the largest number of people. So in this case also, if you are texting and driving, you are being unsafe. So you are creating risk for others. Wherever your car may be located at a given point in time, you are creating risk for others around you. And if you got into an accident and there's a tremendous car pileup, if you will, that occurs, we have even seen 10, 15 car pileups. So obviously what you're doing is not the right thing for for a large number of people. So if you think about what could happen as a consequence of your actions and how lots of people could be negatively impacted by the actions you're taking, then you should refrain from taking that action. So the utilitarian principle also, which is looking at the benefit, the utilitarian principle is looking at the benefit or the harm, if you will, that is caused to large numbers of people. And if your action potentially is a source of harm for a large number of people, then don't take it. The risk aversion principle also applies here, because it essentially is saying you don't indulge in risky behavior. That's essentially what the risk aversion principle says. So that applies as well. The only principle that does not apply here is really the ethical no free lunch rule. Ethical no free lunch is about intellectual property, and in the IT context, theft of intellectual property. So ethical no free lunch is saying that, hey, all intellectual property is owned by somebody, and if you steal it, you are essentially committing harm to them and even committing a crime. But here, there is no intellectual property involved here that is at risk of being stolen or something. So this is the only principle that does not apply in this case. But all the others do. And interestingly enough, this is a scenario where all the principles, except that ethical pre-lunch, which does not apply, the rest of the 5 principles are all saying that you should not do this action. So the cumulative set of implications from applying these principles is a fairly resounding no, you should not perform this action. You know, in the outsourcing case, what makes the outsourcing decision somewhat different rather than so open and shut is that, well, I think I mentioned this in the lecture. Well, if you have a company of 60,000 people, and if by dropping 5,000 jobs and sending them abroad to a low-cost location can help get your cost structure back in order, then that would help you perhaps save the company. And that's a key reason why companies during the heyday of outsourcing were sending their jobs abroad. Thankfully, there are not too many. There's not that huge pressure anymore, and we have even seen reshoring. The phenomenon of reshoring start to arise, where these jobs that were sent abroad are being brought back home. But in the heyday of outsourcing, the business leaders said that we need to do this to save the company. And that was their justification for going ahead and doing the outsourcing. Otherwise, we would lose the company. We would lose 60,000 people if we cannot stabilize the cost structure of our company. So that was the application of the utilitarian principle. The golden rule may be saying to the manager, hey, what if your job was outsourced? And so that is indicating to the manager that, hey, maybe I shouldn't do this. This is not an ethically good thing to do. But the manager would come back and argue that, hey, if I don't outsource these 5,000 jobs, then I may lose the company. And 60,000 jobs will be lost. So that utilitarian principle, as applied to outsourcing, typically indicates that perhaps you should go forward with the outsourcing. So these 2 principles come into conflict with each other. And the manager, according to their values, they have resolved, weigh the pros and cons and then proceed with the decision. But in this case of texting and driving, actually, there are no such conflicts. All the principles are aligned with each other and are saying that don't do this, don't text and drive. So here, the moral compunction, well, that's very clear. The moral compunction is for you to not text and drive. Any comments on the application of these principles?
No, but I had just a thought about the text and drive.
Yeah.
We could look at it from a perspective where it's just a technological limitation right now of speech to text.
Yes.
And
And
so that could go away with, more computing power being put in the cars and you being able to confirm what you just told the computer to send as a reply to the text without getting your eyes off the road.
Yes. So indeed, and let me discuss that very question. So after you apply the ethical principles, you get some information, some direction from this as to what choice is the best choice to take here. Then the second thing you should do to sort of put this into context is to, so we have the ethical principles, and then we also have these 5 moral dimensions of IS. And I'm going to come to your question, but I want to do that in the context of So we have also these 5 moral dimensions of IS. And you should also look at the scenario from the kind of the viewpoint of the prism of these 5 dimensions and see where things fit. Again, a given scenario where ethical choices, where ethics is involved and ethical choice needs to be made, can fit into more than one dimension. Can fit into more than one dimension. So, for example, here, accountability and control is indeed one of the dimensions because it's, it's talking about the accountability on part of the person taking the action. Another moral dimension is system quality, and this is more of the dimension that you are talking about, which is, can we bring sufficient technology into the IT artifact, so that we don't, so that we can minimize the negative outcomes. Such as, if, I think, Pramod, what you were saying is, well, if we made this completely voice activated, and so you're not taking the eyes of the road, the driver who's texting and driving, if they are speaking, and so somehow, and so you have the speech recognition type of technology there. So you don't actually have to type to send your message. You can certainly speak. You can certainly verbalize what you were trying to type. So yes, the system quality dimension also fits into this. So as we do our analysis, we're looking at it from two planes, if you will. One is the plane of the ethical principles, and then there's another plane, which is the plane of the moral dimensions. Now, it can be argued, and it has been argued, that when people are texting and driving, it isn't so much the typing, if you will, that is, there have been some studies done on this, but they become so engaged in the conversation that their mind is somewhere else. So even if instead of actually having to look down and type something onto your smartphone, so even if we made this completely speech recognized, and the speech, and that translates into the text, but so that's a system quality thing. So then, if we did increase the system quality, meaning go to a better technology, would we have corrected the problem? So while yes, there's a dimension of system quality in here, and so that's why it's good to also fit this into the second plane, which is that yes, system quality dimension is here, but by enhancing the technology, would we still correct the problem? So if the person who's texting and driving, if their mind is so engrossed in the conversation, then regardless of whether the person is typing or it's a speech recognition technology that's translating the words into the text, the system quality may not solve the problem. So that's by the way, there's legislation around texting and driving, and some states have completely outlawed this, but other states have not. So this continues to be, an issue that has different implications, and people have argued, well, for those who have tried to bring legislation to outlaw this, well, the people who have argued against doing that is they have said that, well, let's bring in superior technology and we'll cure this problem. Person will not have to take their eyes off the road. But then that has been countered by saying that, well, wait a second, it is not purely the issue of taking eyes off the road. It's also the issue of you're being sort of pulled into this conversation, pulled into the conversation mentally that you're still unsafe from a driving standpoint.
I have a question. In my car, on the steering wheel, there's like a button you push, and it activates the screen, and you can like have a phone call or ask the Siri to play music or anything like that. If you're pressing that button and then you crash while talking with the Siri, isn't that what would that be considered? Or you could even be texting doing that.
Yeah, if you press that button, and yeah, there is the master control things. Several cars, yeah, I have that in mind as well. So it depends. I mean, if you are, I mean, if you're using that to play music, it's fine. But if you mention, it depends on what your system you have. If you went in and started pressing a number of buttons in a sequence, that becomes kind of equivalent to texting. So if you just activated it, that's fine. But if on that master control system for controlling the peripherals in the car, if your attention has sort of diverged from keeping your attention on the road, and you're pressing this long sequence of buttons to do various things, then that essentially becomes equivalent to texting and driving.
Okay.
Because again, like I said, because if you're pressing a lot of things in that, that essentially becomes equal to texting and driving. Some of the navigation systems, like in older cars, if you look at the BMW earlier series, you have a knob for doing the navigation, for finding the place that you want to go to. So you search for restaurants and that, and it's you're doing it through this knob, using the knob that is on the controls on the dashboard, and that that can take your attention away from the road for some length of time as you are hunting for the right location to go to. And I think that's a pretty poor system that they have. So that too would fall into the realm of texting and driving if you have to find the location that you're looking for through an extensive interaction with the navigation system.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot to ask you one thing actually. It was just about the class. When on my calendar I had when was the midterm going to be?
The midterm is going to be, I believe next week. See, this week is going to be quiz number 2.
Okay.
So the midterm is going to cover the material of quiz number 1 and quiz number 2.
Okay. Will the next week's quizzes and stuff be like pushed back because of quiz 2 being this week?
No. Yeah, quiz 2 is this week, so we'll review quiz 2 next Wednesday, and I can also take questions next Wednesday. So let me bring up the syllabus. So I think the midterm is then next week. Is it not?
On the syllabus, it said this week, so I didn't know. Like, so I just assumed next week it would be moved to next week.
Yeah, the midterm. I think I sent out a correction on that.
Okay.
Or the quiz is this week, so the midterm. Let me take a look here.
Yeah, I saw the one about the quiz being moved.
Um, well, let me go back to the. Oh, let's see here. Let's see. Okay, we have quiz 2 this week, so the midterm is next week. So quiz 2 is at the end of this week, and the midterm is at the end of next week.
Okay.
Yeah, the midterm is going to be at the end of next week. So if there's an issue, if there's a confusion there, I will fix that. But the midterm is at the end of next week, and quiz 2, which is on lectures 3 and 4, is at the end of this week.
Okay.
And midterm will cover everything we did. So next, yeah, the midterm will cover everything that we've done so far in the course.
And then the UPS case is on the 24th.
Yes,
Okay.
the UPS case, yeah.
And the resources or the references for the UPS case, they don't have to be like the formatting, like it does have to be MLA or something like that.
No,
Or
you can just take any format that you choose. That'd be fine.
okay. Do they have to be like from a certain source, like from the library sources?
No, look, it could be different sources. So look at the UPS website itself. You can cite that as a source. You can cite other research that you did on the internet. You can see whatever websites you looked at, whatever reports you looked at. So cite all of those things.
Okay.
You can even cite the book because
Okay.
part of it is competitive advantage and things. So you can even cite the book at some point.
Yeah, I've been just reading over the article mainly, looking at the information of there first, and then I'm going to be researching more about the sources.
Yeah, that article is your starting point. So
Right.
that article is your starting point, and you can see some technologies that are mentioned there. You can even see from that article, some business goals that they may have. That's why they're doing these technologies. That's your starting point, and then flesh it out, do a lot of research, and flesh that out.
Okay.
Okay, where were we in the discussion? Okay, we're talking about the dimension. So we say accountability is, of course, a dimension. And system quality, like Prabal had said, what about the speech recognition thing? That's a dimension as well. But it's not clear cut as to whether improving system quality, which means going to a superior technology, would necessarily cure the problem. So that's there as well. Quality of life falls into this as well because we're talking about things like if you're being an unsafe driver, you can cause accidents. Those accidents can have further repercussions. You may have a massive 20 car pileup or something like that. So certainly quality of life, which is about how you're impacting society, that also plays a part in this scenario. Not only that, even the first dimension, information rights, plays a part as well, because some people can make the defense, and they have made the defense, that I'm simply exercising my right to free speech or free communication, if you will. But again, that's there's an aspect to that, but you certainly do not have the right to cause danger to people around you and impact the society in such a negative fashion. So the information rights and obligations, there have been some lawsuits around this, and all these points have been made, but the information rights and obligations has been quickly shut down, if you will, by anybody who raised the argument that hey, I'm simply exercising my right to free speech. No, you don't have the right to free speech if you are being a danger to others. The only dimension that this scenario doesn't really fall into is the property rights. This is not about intellectual property being stolen. There is no intellectual property, if you will, that is involved in the scenario. So most people will argue that that particular dimension is not involved. But the others are.
One additional. Sorry.
Go ahead.
So one additional comment, Dr. Ghosh. So this would apply, these principles and arguments would apply to hands-free calling as well, then, correct? If it's the state of mind of the driver that we're concerned about, there are other distracting factors within the car and outside that could.
Yes, you're correct. The hands-free. So therefore, if we made the system quality sufficiently high, so that it's all speech recognition based, then it essentially becomes like a hands-free call. And that's one of the arguments that was brought up, that we allow we allow people to do hands-free calling on the so they can have a conversation on the phone while they are driving, and we have not outlawed that. So how can we outlaw this if the technology is improved to include voice recognition? And the counter to that has been that so that's what I'm saying. This legislation on outlawing texting while driving is not an open and shut thing, and many states have not yet promulgated laws to ban this. And because it's not open and shut, because people then ask that, well, how is this different? Assuming the improvement of the technology has been done, and voice recognition is a pretty mature technology at this time. So then, how's that different from hands-free calling? And then why do we not outlaw hands-free calling if this argument that your attention is not? So the argument is, if your attention is taken away, so it isn't really about the IT, but it's really about your mind. Then we should also outlaw hands-free calling. So that's an argument made by the proponents of allowing texting while driving. They've said that if we can raise the technology to that level, and it's not going to be that difficult to do that because voice recognition is a mature technology, then so why don't we allow that? And that's kind of why this legislation is kind of in a limbo in certain aspects, because again, like we're saying that that if we ban this, then we would have to ban hands-free calling, and people don't want to ban that. Any other thoughts, comments on this case?
I had something related to this lecture 4, ethics.
Yeah.
The FIP principle and Facebook or Amazon with their collection of personal data, the mounds of personal data they collect?
Yeah, so yes, the collection of personal data, and I was seeing some discussion, great discussion on that. Um, so the collection of personal data can also be viewed from the from the standpoint of the principles. So if we were to look at that, so if right off the bat, let's look at the golden rule. You know, Mark Zuckerman was once asked in an interview, and he was stumped when he was first asked this. So, you know, Facebook's going out and collecting all this information on so many people. And Mark was asked, what if somebody were doing that to you? What if somebody were tracking every move that you make and everything that you say and every website that you visit and created a huge profile on you? Would you like it? And Zucker was actually stumped. He didn't have now, of course, he has a great response for that because now he has thought about it with his PR people and you know, they have a response. But when he was first asked that question, he was stumped. Which means, you know, you can certainly apply the golden rule here. So, you know, so yes, Facebook's going out and collecting. Well, would the CEO of Facebook like it if people are doing that to him? So yeah, the golden rule applies. If you look further in terms of, let's say, the ethical no free lunch, here one can argue that you know, taking information about me is in a certain sense perhaps stealing, you know, stealing information, in a certain sense, stealing intellectual property. As you collect more and more information about me, and as you probe my life, then you know, aspects of this could be seen as theft of intellectual property. You know, nowadays you can get a huge rundown on an individual, everything they have, everything they've done, you know, a complete, comprehensive, and composite picture. But does that information, you know, really belong to Facebook? Well, one can argue, no, it does not. That's information that belongs to me or belongs to the owner. And are you not then stealing intellectual property?
Could you scroll down to the fifth principle slide?
The fifth, the major model
Fair
dimensions.
information, yeah, fair information principles, fifth slide. I believe it's slide number 14.
Okay.
So within there is this access and participation that an individual
Yes.
has the right to review what has been collected on them and all that. But technology is, and the amounts of data we're talking about is so huge, and it's being processed so rapidly and aggregated in different ways so rapidly. There's no way an individual can be in the loop for any of this. So with Facebook and Amazon, I mean, there's no way I would be able to control, if I had accounts with each of them, you know, I would be able to control what data of mine they're aggregating, whether it's accurate, and who they're selling it to.
Yeah, that's true. The Fair Information Principles was actually, and the legislation around that was actually done prior to the social media phenomenon exploding and becoming so big. So the context of the Fair Information Principles was more, the application was more at the corporate level for companies that want to surveil their employees. For you know, the companies who may indeed have a legitimate reason to do that because they do want to make sure that the employees during the workday are focused on their work and are not doing something else. I believe I stated a study where employees actually, you know, left entirely to themselves, they actually spend close to a third of their time on doing other things. They are doing social media. They are looking for other jobs, and it was even found that, well, part of the time they're also surfing porn. So the fair information principles was kind of applied in that context where the company has the right, the companies were given the right to surveil their employees if it is for a legitimate business reason. You can't surveil for the sake of surveilling. If it is for a legitimate business reason, and if you have informed the persons that you are your employees, if you have taken their consent. And so the consent is typically taken when the employee signs on the employment contract. That's when the consent is taken. So that's the context in which these laws were promulgated. Now the thing is, well, now we're in a different situation, and these laws are actually not meant for this, but we're trying to see if they can be. If Facebook and others should take consent, but that, as you pointed out, that's there's so much data out there. So how do you give consent? How do they take the consent? So that's not really so this thing about taking consent isn't really applicable in the particular context we're talking about here, which is user profiling.
Okay,
The state,
could we extend this to the state and federal government then? These principles?
as far as the state and federal governments go, for example, if you look at the Patriot Act, so in the age of terrorism, the Patriot Act was promulgated, was made into law, and that does not require consent from the government, which is very understandable because they're trying to prevent terrorism. So it certainly does not require the government to obtain consent when it's surveilling the people inside the country, or even abroad. So the government, so this thing doesn't really apply to the government. The Patriot Act certainly does not impose any obligations on the government to take consent when they're doing the surveilling for the purposes of defeating terrorism.
So, for instance, if somebody's name came up in a no-fly list erroneously because there was a mistake on the government's part in not being able to distinguish the person beyond anything other than name, is there any avenue to seek redress by the individual, or that's a separate thing from individual privacy here?
I mean, there have been instances of that, as we all know. There have been instances where you can be erroneously labeled as a terrorist. There have been some incidents of that. They have typically been resolved. So it has typically been, so for example, often where that has happened is people coming into the country. So you've on a flight, you just landed at JFK, and let's say your name came up on a list of terrorists. Those instances have actually been resolved. So yes, you would have to face the inconvenience of perhaps sitting in some detention room. I'm not saying you'd be taken away to jail or anything like that, but perhaps being interrogated for a couple of hours, and then typically you would be released. At least that's my knowledge of these type of incidents and how they've been handled. So oftentimes it is a misunderstanding and there could be, your name could resemble the name of some known terrorist, and that is why the government may have detained you at the airport. But those things have been cleared up relatively quickly. It's a case of mistaken identity. They'll probably sit down with you and interrogate you for a while. But then they would also see that, hey, no, you're not a terrorist. You have maybe a house here, and you're just coming home. You work here, your family here, and as you are interrogated and they get the details on who you are, you would most certainly be let go, and that is what I understand has happened in some cases.
The presumption there is they'll do their due diligence. I mean, if you're passed on to another agency, then it's your problem there. So, I mean, it's just a question of how diligent every link in the chain is.
Yeah, it is. Um, but to the best of my knowledge, I've heard that those things, you read in the newspaper, the Homeland Security Department, and they would certainly question you if indeed your name resembles the name of a known terrorist or something like that. But after they interrogate you and they probe your background, I mean, they don't want to spend time on chasing people who are not the bad guys. So they will simply detain you for a while and probe your background, and once it becomes quite clear to them that this is just a case of mistaken identity or something like that, that you'll be let go. It's they don't want to invest in. They have the real bad guys to pursue, so they really don't want to invest too much time in those who are not bad guys. And it's a case of mistaken identity that would quickly emerge as they interrogate you on your background, and you'll be let go.
So generally speaking, would you say there's been an erosion of privacy in public life in the last 20, 30 years compared to?
Well, yes, there's been, of course. As we've been saying, Facebook and other types of social media platforms have been doing user profiling. So there is that aspect that is going on. But then again, that's built into the nature of the internet. So things like the web bugs and web cookies that are there that enable firms like Facebook and other marketing agencies to develop the user profiles. The technology is there, it's built into the internet, so it's not easy to stop. That is not easy to stop. So that part of user profiling has been going on. Then, of course, we're talking about terrorism. So the government has, of course, been surveilling people more intensely to protect society. So that is going on there. Certainly, the government has its rights to keep its society safe. So therefore, that's why that part of surveilling is going on. And then, of course, the user profiling type of thing is going on. So we do see an erosion of privacy, but some types of erosion of privacy, we have to, if you will, certainly have to accept as being members of society in good standing. So therefore, we have to certainly accept certain types of limitations. Of course, the question is about user profiling. That's not something that the government is doing. That is done more by by search engines and social media platforms and everything, where what we are tracking is being searched, and that is an erosion of privacy, which, of course, a number of people do find quite troubling. And there's the tussle that's going on in the IT world today as to what extent should we let the user profiling part of surveillance continue.
One last topic I wanted to discuss, the short selling. Does that give a leg up to hedge funds? Why are they alone able to do that, where they're able to borrow shares with just a security hold from brokerages because they have seats or chairs in Wall Street? And so then that's where, for a lot of common people, the unfairness stems from, and then you have this whole effort to short squeeze the short sellers, and where Robinhood came in and whatnot with the GameStop stock and AMC stock. But
Well, short selling
is
can
there
be done by anybody. It's not limited to. Short selling is not limited to the hedge funds. It can be done by anybody. I can do short selling at any point in time. You do have to sort of let them know that you have investment savvy to do that. So there's a set of forms that have to be signed, but anybody can do that. Now, hedge funds do it because, well, they want to. Short selling is a quick way of, if you know what you're doing, and if you have information about the direction of the stock, if the stock is going to go down, you can make money on that. So it's not for everybody. So therefore, if you have an account with a brokerage, you'll have to sign some papers about doing it. Yeah.
If you have information, let me just kind of try to draw some lines there. Isn't that insider trading? If you have information that the market doesn't have, the rest of the market.
That is insider trading, precisely. That is insider trading.
So then, how is short selling ethical?
If you are doing it on the basis of having information, then that is not only unethical, that is illegal. If your short sale is based on your having information that is not available to the public, then that is illegal. Now, you could be another type of short seller who's a momentum trader. So momentum traders are not, they're simply trading on the basis of a short-term trend that they're seeing. So again, a short seller is somebody who has to have deep pockets. The momentum can turn, go against you, but there are lots of momentum traders among the hedge funds who have experience in doing this, and they can see that a particular stock, without being privy to insider fundamentals, they can see if a particular stock has momentum in a certain direction. And then they would short that. They would basically trade on the momentum, as we say. They're trading on the momentum, and they're shorting that to make a good return. In fact, their very act of actually shorting that further accelerates the momentum, and it actually, you can end up being quite a big winner. But obviously, this is not meant for people investing for their retirement or something like this. It is meant for people who are in this business and have history of stock movements, which the hedge fund traders do.
So
they're good at that.
So you don't see a need to abolish short selling per se? Or...
No. We don't want to abolish short selling. No. It provides important liquidity to the market. Not all short sellers gain. A lot of short sellers lose in a big way. Even the hedge fund traders lose. So there isn't. This is not a systematic way of gaining a return. You want to outlaw only things that are biased in a systematic way, because that's making the market inefficient. But short selling is not something that is there's a systemic problem with the market. In fact, having people who are short selling actually adds to the liquidity of the market. So there's no reason to outlaw short selling per se, and those who are trading on the momentum of a stock,
So would you say it benefits?
provided the short sale is not based on insider information. That's a very different thing. That we do want to outlaw and have outlawed.
So would you say short selling benefits the majority of people involved in the market, or just a few predominantly?
Well, if you look at predominantly who does it, and it's not advisable. That's why if you open an account with Charles Schwab and you want to short sell, there's a number of paperwork that you have to go through. Because you can get wiped out, and you can get deeply in debt as well. So therefore, Charles Schwab will make you sign a number of papers if you do want to short sell. So it's not something that is done by most people because of the risks of doing it. But if somebody is willing to take that risk and they believe that there are momentum traders out there who do make money on this, and people in the hedge fund are people like that. So they do, they've been in the stock market business for a long time. They know momentum trading. And so they do participate in short sales, but it's not for the majority of the people. For the majority of people, the only distant benefit, and it's kind of a second stage benefit, is that it actually makes the market more liquid. That you have the market becomes liquid, more and more liquid as you have many people trade in both directions, both buying direction and the sell direction. Otherwise, the market becomes illiquid, and then the price is not in an illiquid market. The price that you're seeing of the stock may not reflect the fundamentals because then there's not enough buying and selling going on. So you're looking at a price that whenever a commodity is not traded, then its price is an illiquid price, which may not reflect its value. So, short selling, it's, if somebody wants to do it, we don't want to prevent that. We only want to prevent short sales that are based on insider information. But short selling, there's just momentum trading, which people do. They're seeing a stock fall. They've got a lot of experience in buying and selling stock. They know that this pattern will probably continue for the next X number of minutes or X number of hours, and they would short sell, and then they would short sell there to make a quick buck. They're not privy to any insider information other than the publicly visible information of the momentum of the stock, the direction in which it is going. And like I said, frequent buying and selling where the price of the stock is not stuck at some place is simply leading to the market being more efficient and being more liquid.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions or anything?
I don't have any questions.
Okay. Prabhu, any further questions?
No, Dr. Hush, that should do it for today.
All right. I will then close the session.